The 76 brand team is here to support you during these difficult times. Keeping your employees and consumers safe is our priority, and we are dedicated to helping you navigate through today's business challenges. We have been on a journey of investing in innovation and our image to help you meet the demands of today's consumers and the next generation. Our reliability and brand strength, along with a history of helping customers succeed, is the foundation of our future. We are on a mission to high-grade our brand and expand our network throughout the Pacific Northwest. Your tribal stations are a key part in helping build a strong future for 76. We are proud to have partnered with you on more than a dozen stations and want to continue to help you grow your business and create a legacy. 76 has been a beacon of trust for nearly a century, and the future's never looked brighter. Come grow with us.
With talents that established him as a Fortune 500 leader and professional stand-up comedian, Garrison Wynn fuses comic timing and research to deliver motivational business expertise. For 24 years, he has given keynote presentations at association and corporate events for clients like American Express, ExxonMobil, the National Convenience Store Association, and Tribal Hub. He is an Amazon #1 best-selling author who has been a weekly contributor to the Washington Post and featured in Forbes and Inc. magazines. Today he will be sharing with you on the topic of how and why to build an innovation culture at your C-store. Your store's culture is a huge part of attracting and keeping great customers and top talent. So we're very excited to hear from Garrison Wynn.
Thank you. Change is mandatory and stress is optional. Yeah, change is mandatory, stress is optional. But how do you get people to do what you want them to do? But take a look at the real truth about success. What is it the most successful people do? What do they do that make them so successful? So we studied thousands of top performers in multiple industries and in Indian country to find that out. So we're talking about, it's about leadership, communication, change, but the bottom line is influence. Are you personally influential enough to make that happen? You have the trust and relationships in place to move forward with a culture of change. So raise your hands if you're dealing with difficult people in your life right now. Those of you who do not raise your hands, you are those difficult people. You guys are looking at each other. Some of us difficult people that we deal with on a regular basis are the know-it-all experts. How many of you are dealing with the know-it-all expert in your life? How many of you actually married one? That'll happen. God bless you. Somebody's doing this back there. That's bad. We get face-to-face with people, they know everything about everything. And our studies show the #1 thing to do is to praise their ability. It's very important that they know something. #2 is to paraphrase what they say, repeat back to them what they say, and lead them to find their own errors because you may have noticed pointing out their mistakes is not working for you. #3 is to focus on the solution. What is the goal of the know-it-all expert? What's the goal? To be right. How many people out there have ever been right? How many of you have just been damn right? How many of you have been so right that nobody would talk to you? Just going to show up right? So years ago, I had a guy working for me, and everything this guy did was successful and profitable, fantastic. And this one guy was responsible for 28% of the entire company's revenue. One person working for me, I coached him up. Thank you. One day, #1 was wrong. Oh, yes, he was. And I was right. Oh, yes, I was. And I walked up to #1 that day and looked at him and all his wrongness. And he looked up at me and all my rightness. And I explained with great charismatic flair how incredibly wrong he was and how incredibly right I was. And I was so impactful and articulate that he agreed. And then he quit. Learned a big lesson that day, and that is, if you criticize others' ideas too much when things are changing, they'll almost never use yours, no matter how good they are. I started off working for a company and got promoted to store manager, then regional manager. Next thing you know, I'm over multiple locations. I'm the boss. Oh yeah, 27 years old and the boss. Oh yeah, young boss. And you were not the boss. Oh yeah, young boss. And all of my employees were older than I was. Oh yeah, young boss. Got to work that first day and I met my people. I called them my people. I said, people, In my infinite wisdom, I will lead you to the promised land of success. All your hopes and dreams and ideas and innovations, forget about all that. We're going to do things a special way, and that way is called my way. It's not my way, it's the highway. Was I effective? No. They made up a special name for me. They called me punk-ass manager. It's hard to be effective when you're a punk-ass manager, and I learned a big lesson that day, and that is, if you make people feel important, you and what you have to offer is a lot more important to them. When things are changing and you're stressed, people don't choose what's best. No, they choose what they're the most comfortable with, whether it's the best or not. If there was one definable best, everybody would choose that. Nothing else would be considered. Decision making doesn't work that way. So when it comes to being effective and moving through change as stress-free as possible, it is all about judgments. So raise your hand if you've been judged. Raise your hand if you have judged. And how many of you would never raise your hand regardless of anything that I say? Thank you. Okay, here's our experiment today. What I'd like you to do, I want you to go ahead and I want you to just look into your device, into your phone or laptop or whatever, and I want you to look deeply into my eyes. You can do it. Don't be shy. Look deeply. As you're looking deeply in my eyes, ask yourself this question. Do you see anything weird in there? Yes, that's called judgment. And for those of you who say, I'm not judgmental, that's called lying. That's called lying, yes. We are all walking, living, breathing judgment machines. We just judge all the time. So how many people out there have ever had to evacuate for a hurricane or a flood or a snowstorm or some natural disaster? I had to evacuate Houston, Texas for a hurricane. They had to re-evacuate. I had to come back in after I evacuated. So I'm coming back in on the outskirts of town, got kind of lost, the big town, pulled into a gas station. Sitting at this gas station is this crusty old guy. Judgment. And this guy is so old, he looks like he's not going to live through the conversation. He's an old guy. He's got like fishing hooks in his hat. He's got that faraway disturbed look in his eye. And I get the feeling I'm not going to get very good directions from this guy. Judgment. I said, excuse me, sir, I'm trying to get back to Houston. Can you help me? And he goes, what road you come in on, boy? I said, there's one road and we're both on it. The road we're both on. Both on. So this guy's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Judgment. What we refer to in Texas as being one enchilada short of a combo plate. That's a lot funny if you're from Texas. Anyway, what I do is build some rapport. So when it comes to change sometimes, it's the speed at which we can connect with those around us. How quickly can a leader connect with those around them? So I'm thinking, what do myself and gas station man have in common? I'm hungry, so I'm thinking food. I said, sir, I'm hungry. I'm looking for food, but I don't want fast food. And he goes, there's McDonald's in town that ain't that fast. When I deem someone's kind of an idiot, I go to hand signals. I'm like, I, meaning me and not you, need directions to Houston, international symbol for Houston. He said, son, pay attention to me when I'm talking to you, boy. I said, whatever. He goes, what you want to do is go down the road a piece. I'm like, a piece of what? He goes, you know, some miles. I'm like, 1 mile, 1,000,000 miles, work with me, gas station man. He said, listen. I said, okay. Listen to me, son. He said, go down the road a piece. There's going to be like a highway. There's going to be like a hump on that highway. Get up on top of that hump. When you're on that hump, look out your window. You see like a dirt road and a pond and trailer park. Don't go in there. Stay on that main road and take a left where the old schoolhouse used to be. Paraphrase what he said. You're telling me to take a left at a landmark I've never heard of that no longer exists. What happened next happens to a lot of us. When we're trying to reduce our stress, move forward, do the best we can, trying to reduce our stress, we're failing. And it's happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to you as a leader, and that is I snapped. Anybody out there ever snap? Yeah, some of you snapped recently. And I snapped, I lost it, and I used the D word. I said, sir, you just dumb. He said, you know something, son, I ain't the smartest man around these parts. And then again, boy, I ain't lost neither. Yeah. Who had the communication problem? I did. Big lesson in change, big lesson in leadership, big lesson in influence, and that is everybody knows something you don't. And the minute you think you know it all, wisdom leaves you like that. What's weird is what stays. Your education, your training, it's just the wisdom that leaves. How many people out there remember the old TV show Lassie? If you don't know Lassie, Lassie was a show, an old show, old kind of silly show, about a very smart dog, weirdly smart dog, and a not so smart kid. In the show, very typical of the show, what would happen, Lassie would bark, roar, roar, and little Timmy, that was the kid's name, would go, what, Lassie, what? There's a man with his foot cut on a railroad track? Yeah, because Timmy was fluent in dog on the show. Remember the old TV show Flipper? Flipper, about the dolphin, you know, and Flipper was pretty much just a liquid Lassie. Put those two shows together, call it Lassie, same stupid show. Lassie and Flipper didn't have to speak English or the language of the day or any language. Didn't have to understand any process, okay, to have the most important information there was, which was go now. The message of those animal shows from the 50s and 60s and 70s is troubles are brewing, follow the animals. We have a pretty good idea that everybody knows something we don't. The problem that we have day to day in stressful situations, trying to make change happen, living in COVID times, is that people are often wrong. Ever happened to you? Yeah. What do you tell people when they're wrong? You just tell them wrong, or maybe use like a leadership hand motion. That is wrong. Here's what I told an employee one time. I said, I know you're intelligent. I just can't tell that by talking to you because you're wrong. Not good. We looked at our research. And over 10 years, we surveyed 5,371 top performers in multiple industries, including some in Indian country and some in convenience stores in general. And we surveyed them. We were looking for people who were good at moving change forward, reducing the stress of themselves and their employees, and moving things forward and succeeding in difficult times. So over 10 years, we identified the companies and then the people inside those companies. Gallup gave us some help. So we found that 5,371. And then Gallup said, hey, let's dig deeper. Let's take a look at the top 1% of a group that's already great. So we looked at the top 1% of that 5,371. What did they do that made them better than this group that was already successful? We started to see certain traits. And a trait that showed up among these leaders was they didn't use the word wrong. They said things like, I disagree with you, but I'm willing to listen. I've never heard that before. What you just said doesn't make any human sense. I've been here for 25 years. You've been here since Monday, but please tell me more. So what it was rather than you're wrong was a request for more information. They took that tactic. 3 things could happen. Number 1 is you might find out that you're much more in agreement than previously thought because you listened. Number 2, you listen and realize, yeah, they are nuts, but you know why they're nuts, because you listened. And number 3 is they start to change their story to match your story in an effort to look right in front of other people. What's that about? Well, our research showed that, in fact, was the beginnings of trust. So how many people out there have ever read a book on trust? Okay, who's read a book? Just a book? Any kind of a book? Who's just drinking beer and watching TV? Yeah. If you've never read a book on trust, you've missed very little, very little. Most books on trust say the exact same thing for about 75 years. It takes time to build trust. You got to do what you say you're going to do over a period of time. And that sounds right, I guess. We did the research on that. Over 6.5 years, we looked at all previous research, all white papers written on trust, all the old Dale Carnegie stuff went as far back as 1916. If you're doing research in the U.S. before 1916, a lot of people named Jedediah. It just gets weird. Trust me, start 1916. A lot of research pre-World War II, a lot of research post-World War II, a lot of research for some reason in the 70s in California, don't know why. Flattened out the data, looked at it left and right. What we found was what we call the truth about trust. And I sugarcoat this next part of my message for a lot of audiences. I was told I didn't have to do it for you. So the truth about trust, the truth is you got people who have known you for 5 years and still don't trust you. And some have known you for 5 minutes and they do. Why would that be? It's because trust is built on the foundation of 2 things, compassion and competence. Compassion and competence. They believe you care about them and their job and their future. And they believe that you can do your job as a leader however they believe that's defined, which is usually based on how well you consistently and clearly defined it for them. They believe those 2 things, they'll trust you pretty quickly. That's why some leaders are brand new and dumb as a stump, and people listen to everything that person says. And this person is brilliant and been around forever and knows everything about everything, and no one listens to anything that person ever says. Yeah. But how do you prove to somebody in a very short period of time that you do care and you are competent? Well, we interviewed employees in convenience stores, inside and outside of Indian country, other retail situations, and also customers as well. And here's the amalgamated answer that comes back from those anonymous surveys. I felt heard. I felt listened to. It was collaborative. I could see my input and their solution is proof of being heard. So all this, I felt heard, I felt heard, I felt heard. Sounded kind of fluffy to me. I'm kind of a science-minded guy. My staff were all in their 20s, told me that I might not be the sharpest knife in the drawer because they didn't see what I had, which is a gigantic body of information that showed if people felt heard and listened to, in the first, 30 seconds or a minute and a half of any individual encounter, they start to trust you automatically and don't even know why. Yeah, that's right. It's called the pure and simple power of making people feel heard. And it sounds simple. Okay, Garrison, I get it. Listening and leadership and change, it all makes sense. But let's get real. I mean, listening's not something you do because it's the right thing to do. Listening actually works because it's neurology. So let's talk about the scientific aspect of listening that no one's talking about unless you're a neurologist. So you guys know you have different chemicals in your brain. Some of you more than others based on what we did last night, right? So let's just say this is a chemically balanced brain, whatever that means. And a chemically balanced brain you react normally, right? A chemically imbalanced brain, you underreact and overreact throughout the day. Shut up, I've had it, you're fired. There are gigantic chemical balances we know. In the last 65 years, there's medication that can even those things up. And by the way, as a leader, if you need medication, please take it. I would take it right now. So we have a general idea how chemicals work in the brain. When someone feels truly heard, and they feel listened to, and they trust, when they feel truly heard and listened to and they trust, when they feel that way, literally the pituitary gland squirts a fluid over the brain that puts that person in an anesthetized state. There's a long neurological explanation for this, and I call it being stoned on like. And they will choose this person over that person, sometimes based on no other criteria. It's why people fall in love and get the hots for each other. It's why somebody will stay with the same C-store, the same manager, the same product, the same idea, the same culture forever, regardless of tangible results. It is the pure and simple power of making people feel heard. And we found that leaders in times of change that were able to make their people around them feel heard and in turn make their customers feel heard were able to change and shift, even in times of COVID, okay, have customer retention and have employee retention. The pure and simple power of making people feel heard. But when I think about that, there's a non-scientific example I like a lot about the pure power of making people feel heard. Have you ever seen a really, really smart woman? This woman's got a good job, she's educated, she's dynamic, she knows what she's doing, and she's hanging out with this goofy guy who looks bad, his vehicle looks bad, he's got no job, no friends, no future, no hope. You know what that is? That is one damn good listener. Yeah, don't kid yourself. About the pure and simple power of making people feel heard. Again, it showed up big in the research, and it's a very, very, very big deal. But there's this idea about behavior. Can I change behavior? And you can change someone's behavior. If you're trying to change someone to get them to react better, maybe to respond better to what's going on, you have to first take a look at what you're doing to prevent that. In other words, the most successful leaders and influential people in times of change make sure they're not doing something that triggers the bad behavior. So you take a look at the role that you might play in their bad behavior, you're extraordinarily influential. One of the ways to be innovative and influence is to really take a look at the role that you might play or how you might trigger somebody else's behavior. Again, very, very powerful. It can be done. I'm not saying it's always you, but it could be. But the answer you want to ask yourself, or I guess the question rather you want to ask yourself, is you want to be right or you want to be effective? You want to be right or you want to attract and keep top talent in your business? You want to be right, you want to get the job done. You want to be right, you want to make money. You want to be right, you want to be effective. And most of us want to be right. Reminds me of a story about a guy. There's a guy in LA driving down the freeway. Traffic is horrible. He's on the freeway in LA. It's really terrible traffic. His wife calls on the cell phone. Honey, be careful. Be careful. There's a crazy man going the wrong way down the freeway. He goes, no, honey, there are thousands of them. Yeah, sometimes it's you. So if you take a look at the role that you play in other people's behavior, then you've got some influence. It's what the most influential people did, the most influential leaders, what they did in order to keep and attract employees around them and to have that culture. You see, if I make my employees feel that way, they'll typically treat the customers that way. Extremely important. Very, very important. And part of what leaders need to do to actually be successful. But it leads to something else, and that is this idea that people have a different agenda. These people have a different agenda. The truth is, when it comes to change, everybody wants the same thing. They want love, money, and prestige. I'll rephrase that. They want sincerity. They want people to be real. They want multiple solutions for a single problem, right? They want options, and they want to look good in front of the people. They want to look good in front of us, what all humans want. So number one, are you real or are you fake? Are you really the person you are in front of your friends and family, or you put on like a leadership mask? Who's ever met a fake leader? Yeah, absolutely. Are you being who you really are? It's very interesting. How many of you out there deal with a real character? And why do we like real characters? Why do we hire them? These special people, these real characters. Why do we hire them? Because we know they're being who they are. Have you noticed we let real characters get away with stuff we don't let other people get away with? What happened last night? Oh, just Jimmy got drunk and sold some laptops. He'll bring them back. You know Jimmy. What happens if you are, phony and screw up? Not so well forgiven. So one of the best things you can be is be you, whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your tribe is, whatever your idea is, whoever you are. Being yourself causes people to trust you. Some research was done, I think it was by Pew and maybe again by Harvard Review a couple of years later, that showed that people trusted people because they believed they were being who they are, even if they didn't necessarily like their personality. Interesting. We would trust someone we didn't like their personality. We just believed it really was their personality. They weren't faking it. Important. Number two, you You want multiple solutions for a single problem. If you're the kind of person that says there's only one way to do it, there's only one way, they built a store around my body, there's just one way to do everything. The minute that flies out of your mouth, everybody under 30 knows you're full of it. If you're under 30 years old, you know one thing above all others because you were raised with computers from the crib. You know there's more than one way to do everything. And a safety director at a manufacturing company said it best at a big safety meeting. Better gather around the safety meeting. There are 3 ways we can do this. 2 of them will kill you. I do it this way. It's called the non-death method. It's my favorite method. I'm not saying your way's wrong. We may do it one day that way. Today's not that day, but one day. People need to know you're not trying to force a single agenda, that you're thinking about multiple solutions for a single problem. When I think about multiple solutions for a single problem, there's a lady down in Florida, and she's a living embodiment of multiple solutions for a single problem because she's a veterinarian and a taxidermist. And her motto is, either way, you're getting your dog back. Either way. That is multiple solutions for a single problem. Number 3 is prestige. Can you make people look smart? Can you make people look good in front of the people they want to look good in front of? Can you teach somebody something and have them go out and take credit for it? And why are we talking about these 3 things? The people know that you're real. You're really being who you are. And they know that you know there's more than one way to do something. You're not just pushing a single agenda. And they know they'll look good to other people because they're working for you or they're dealing with you. If they know those 3 things about you, they'll listen to every single thing you say, every time you open your mouth for the rest of your life. It is the foundation of influence and why some people are so incredibly effective when it comes to leadership and why some people, when things are changing and times are difficult and times are stressful, they're able to perform in a way that attracts people to them. They're able to perform in a way that shows that they are a leader that people want to actually follow. Remember, if you don't have any followers, you're not much of a leader. So we want to be the kind of leader that people want to gravitate to. Important. But it leads to something else, and that is believability. As you guys know, some things may be true, but not that believable. Who here watches late night TV shows? Late night, some of these old late night TV shows. The most unbelievable show, there's a lot of unbelievable shows from the 70s. The most unbelievable show is the TV show Bonanza. And for those of you who are not familiar with Bonanza, Bonanza was literally the story of a 50-year-old dad and his 3 48-year-old sons. That's the show. Yeah, in no way believable. We get face to face with people who believe things so strongly they're looking for reasons to prove what they already believe is true. I'll say that again. We get face to face with people as leaders who believe things so strongly they're looking for reasons to prove what they already believe is true. That makes change management very difficult. So let me show you the change management meeting that never works, that's very popular. Ready? Here we go. Let's take a look at the new way. First of all, the old way was bad. The old way was just bad. The old way was wrong. Yeah, was wrong. The new way's good because it's new. So all the features and benefits. People go, I don't want new. I'm old school. I want to put white out on the computer screen and do it the old damn way because I'm old. Yeah. The real reason people don't want to change is because nobody wants to be a senior beginner. Nobody wants to wake up and realize what they used to know is no longer valid. So they shoot holes in the new way and they cling to the old way because it makes them smart. And by the way, senior beginners don't have to be old in age. They can just be stuck in their ways, right? Yeah. But the way to be effective is to make sure you understand how to be influential. So let me show you now the change management meeting that always works. Let's talk about the new way. First of all, the old way worked as good as it could. We did the best we could with what we had, right? Did the best we could. Let me show you how the old way is similar to the new way. And I make every comparison I can dig up between what I know you already know and the new way. I look for the similarities in the new way that are connected to what you already know. So once I show you that there are similarities, and once I show you that your existing knowledge is still valuable, then I show you how it might be different and better. You want to get buy-in? You want to make change happen? Similarities first, differences second. Show people how what they already know now is still valuable. They're much more willing to buy into a new idea. It is what the most influential leaders do. When things are changing and you've got all kinds of difficult circumstances, especially in the middle of a pandemic, having a hard time finding and keeping employees, having employee retention problems, one of the most important things is to make sure that you're not telling people that what they already know now is invalid. It's difficult to train people and to get buy-in on a new idea if that's what you're doing. So similarities first and differences second. That leads to something else. And that is, how many of you are dealing with people who've been around a long time? How many of you deal with people you thought were dead and there they were, right? You ever had happen to be an employee? I thought he died 5 years ago and there he is, he looks good. But it leads to this. The truth is, and this is a big one, is the number one thing that all humans value is feeling valuable. I'll say that again. The number one thing that all humans value is feeling valuable. And that's not a feel-good story or a theory or my opinion. That's the accumulative results of 70 years of Gallup surveys in 46 countries and 27 languages. So we actually know about people. If you make people feel valuable, they'll value you. These days, there's some stuff going on in your industry, from fuel tax problems to customer issues. Being successful in the C-store business in Indian country during COVID can be stressful. The innovation mostly happens, though, in tough times. That's right. When things are tough, when things are really, bad or hard to manage, we get innovative. Historically, when things are terrible, we sometimes rise above them. Some of the best ideas, best inventions, best processes came in difficult times. Some of the best people with the most character, who have really a lot to be grateful for, regardless of circumstances, got that way and felt that way because tough times made them that way. They were able to overcome those times. Sometimes you have something to overcome, it just gives you a feeling of pride, but it also gives you a feeling of determination. And so we found that great ideas come in tough times. And innovative influence is all about making sure people feel valuable regardless of circumstances, regardless of who they are. If you can make those employees feel valuable and make those customers feel valuable, you'll have customer retention, as I said earlier, and employee retention as well. The last thing you want is that unhappy cashier talking to that unhappy customer. They'll just leave together. We're both leaving. So it's important. And if you're a cashier out there, know how important your job is. Sometimes you're the experience. You're the trust being built right there. Extremely important. It is very important. So COVID has caused many reservations to shut down. They had shutdowns that went on. C-stores are very influential. Some C-stores had to become grocery stores. But helping people get through tough times, that's what the community needed most. So whether you're a tribal leader or a cashier or a store manager or just some dude, whoever you are, your influence is important. Your contribution is gigantic. And sometimes just that one conversation between that cashier and that manager, that one conversation between that cashier and customer, that other people see happen, that proves that that particular store is doing well, that people can feel. You ever walk into a place and can tell that the people who work there don't like each other? That's kind of a tough problem. So that culture inside the store is very important. And the culture in general is important. So whatever level of leader you are, it's important. And even if you're not a leader, you may want to be a leader. And even if you're somebody who's just by yourself, being able to lead the way and help others is extremely important, hugely important. It leads to something else though. Right now, employee turnover is a big deal. Employee turnover is a huge deal. Not just tribal businesses, it's everywhere. But it's high in tribal businesses. It's high in Indian country. But again, all over the country. There are some reasons right now that employee retention can be very difficult. Right now, for the first time ever, between the ages of 18 and 38, 52% of Americans live at home. That's never happened before. Some of that's pandemic, some of it's culture, but that's what it is. So a lot of times people don't need a job so bad, they can survive. They're not paying their rent. Also, they're getting married less. So there's a lot of things that are happening. But one of the keys in employee retention is the onboarding process. And that means when people are being hired, how easy is it for them to learn? How's that first day? How are their first 4 or 5 hours on the job? What does it feel like to start to work at your store? What does it feel like to go to work for you? And one of the key things is training. Right now, there's a lot of training that doesn't really work very well. It's not clear enough. It's too difficult. And one of the things when you see online training especially, or a video, is that if you stop playing the video, if it's a 10-minute video, you stop it 5 minutes through, and every time you start again, it goes back to the beginning, no one wants that job. We interviewed a lot of young people who said, the main reason I left is because I couldn't get through the videos. If you're 23 years old, 24 years old, you're not going to watch a video 10 minutes through. That's a cultural thing. We can complain about it and make fun of it if we're older, but here's the deal. Successful leaders understand you got to manage people for who they are, not who you wish they were. I'll say it again. You got to manage people for who they are, not who you wish they were. And the worst leadership strategy on earth is wishing people were you. That's probably not going to happen. So important. That onboarding process is important. But it does come down to employee engagement. So let's talk about what employee engagement actually is. If you want to change stress-free, the first thing you have to understand is about, what it takes to create that situation. And employee engagement is pretty simple, but it's important to know how it works and the order in which it works. Engaged employee is someone who feels like their direct supervisor who manages them, cares about them, and supports them. Number one, I feel my manager, direct supervisor, cares about me and supports me. Number two, I know how my job that I do, if even it's just sweeping up the floor, I know how my job helps the entire company, the store, the organization be successful. And number three, I see a path, I see a future. Either I see a promotion or I see a job I want to come to every day. That's what a good job looks like. And people who believe they have a good job do a good job. Employee opinion drives productivity. Employee opinion drives productivity. Really, really important to understand that employee opinion, employee feels drives productivity. So that's what employee engagement is. But having said that, let's talk about employee engagement for a second. And we have some great information that is with us here from Gallup. If you look at this slide, it's called Curing Disengagement. You'll see 4 stacks. The first stack is the U.S. working population. The next stack is people who are ignored. The next stack is labeled weakness, and the one's labeled strengths. So we're talking about engaged, not engaged, engaged. So here's the thing. That 30% is the percentage of people who actually believe their supervisor cares about them, they see a future, they know how their job's important. So they believe those 3 things, 30%. 55% don't believe that, and 15% hate your guts, hope the store burns down and you're in it. Yeah, that's what it is. So that's the truth about the working population. Only 30% are engaged. So the first thing we'll talk about, ignore them. Let's just ignore people. Ignore your employees. Just stop talking. Just go. When you ignore people, guess what? It goes away. Look at that. If you could see that number, it'd be 2%. So you lost 28% of all that engagement because you ignored people. We looked at some surveys that were exit surveys of people who left their jobs and quit their jobs in retail, and 79% listed the number one reason: my boss never talks to me. My boss, it doesn't pay attention to me. Nobody's paying attention. They're leaving because no one pays attention to them. So ignored is a big issue when it comes to influence and employee retention. So number 3, weakness. Let's work on weaknesses. Yeah, after all, look, 45%, a 15% increase for working on weaknesses. Let's do it. So here's how it goes. Hey, welcome to your job review. Let's talk about the 5 ways you suck. Suck, 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 and suck. Now go out there and be somebody. I mean, after all, it's working, right? There's a problem. It's called side effects. What happens when you do that, people get stressed. And what happens, even though that statistically they will write in a survey, when you point out their weaknesses, that they're more engaged in the job, they quit. They get hurt. The money counts off. All kinds of problems come from that. So though it says they're more engaged a little bit, it's disastrous. One of the worst things you can do is sit someone down and just focus on their weaknesses. Think about that. It just doesn't work. So what's the solution? Pretty simple. Strengths. Focus on strengths. So what you do on strengths, it says 61%, you'll see the stack, is you just sit them down and go, hey, look, here are the 5 things you're doing right. Boom, 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 and boom. Okay, and here's some other things you need to work on. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, so you're doing pretty good. You're awake. You show up for work. You kind of know what you're talking about. You're kind of friendly. These are all good things. You need to work on these things. So it's basically you're showing them literally what they're doing right first and what they're doing wrong second. And as simple as this actually is, the results are amazing. It says 61%. We've doubled our engagement just by doing that. And guess what? This works for anybody. You can sit your kids down, sit your family down, sit your spouse down and say, hey, look, here's what you're doing wrong, and see how that gets you. You probably notice how well that's working for you. Or sit them down and go, hey, look, here's what's working. You're doing this, this, this. Let's work on this together. Let's work on this thing. So basically, you are allowing them to see their problems through the filter of their strengths. And here's what we found out. If you're talking to people who are under age 35, if someone's under 35 statistically and you start off talking about what they're doing wrong, that's the only filter they have. They never hear anything. They can't even emotionally process what they're doing right. So if you want to be a successful, influential leader and improve your employee retention numbers and get better performance from people, you got to sit them down and say, here's what's working, okay, this, and this. And maybe not a lot's working. Here's the one thing that's working and the three things you're working on. But whatever it is, important. But let's take a look at the results of that. The results are pretty good here. These are engaged clients, employees, and contractors and coworkers are. And number one, they are 40 times more likely to recommend you. So by focusing on strengths first, they are 40 times more likely to recommend you. They are 15.5 times more likely to stay with you. So employee retention is far, far better. They are also 9 times more likely to enjoy working with you, 43% safer and more focused on the job. By the way, this is such a big deal about safety, about the connection between employee engagement and safety, that most large corporations that do some dangerous work, the foundation of their safety programs are now employee engagement. Very, very big deal. Number 86% more likely to be loyal to you, loyal to the customer, loyal to an idea, loyal to the change you're asking them to make. And 4.5 times more likely to recommend the organization's products and services. That means that when your employees are not working, they talk about the good things that you sell. They'll recommend products and services. You should definitely get your gas over here. You definitely buy this over here. You buy from where I work. Come to my store. Buy from me. Important. They're in the community saying, hey, come buy from me. Making people feel valuable and focusing much more on strengths, okay, than weaknesses allows everything else you do to get better results. So it doesn't matter what it is. And the main important thing is it will actually lower your stress and your employee stress. It'll lower your stress and the people that you work with. It'll lower your stress and the stress of the community. So let's get real, really, really real about stress, okay? I mean, we don't talk about it enough, but let's get real. Stress is a belief system. I mean, there's not really a such thing as stress. Stress is a belief that we hold, and it causes a physical and sometimes medical reaction. In other words, people jump out of airplanes for fun, okay, and they're hospitalized because of worry. People literally jump out of a perfectly good airplane. It's not on fire or anything. You jump out. Usually, I think skydiving means that you're strapped to another person. You go, ah! And they love that. But then they're hospitalized because of worry. It's the belief system they hold. And the leading cause of stress is knowing exactly what you're supposed to be doing and consistently doing something else. That's right. The leading cause of stress is knowing exactly what you're supposed to be doing and consistently doing something else. So being organized, knowing what the next step is, having a plan, having a dashboard of activities, you know that these are the 5 things you need to be looking at, dramatically lowers your stress. But more importantly, it's the transference of stress. That's right. Stressful leaders have stressful employees. That's right. Stressful people create more stressful people. And sometimes your reaction can really cause an issue in influence. The truth is that if you want to know why people have stopped telling you the truth, it may be because your reaction's so bad. Don't tell grandma this, she'll freak out, right? And that's true. So what happens is the worse you react or the more that you show that you're stressed out, the more people don't want to tell you what's going on. So that means a stressed out leader has very little information. But also it's important to make sure that you're training people in the right way. And the truth is this, teaching someone to develop their own brilliance is much more effective than just giving them yours. I'll say it again, teaching people to develop their own brilliance is much more effective than just giving them yours. When it comes to training, sometimes not just what to do, not just how to run the cash register, not just how to run this department or run this or run that, but maybe teach them to rely on themselves. Teach them that they've got what it takes. Look for the strengths they have. Find a strength and talk about that strength. Look for how that strength can help the organization succeed. And hire people sometimes, if you can, if it's possible, hire them for the strengths they have. You want to hire the people who have what it takes to do the job. I know you want a cashier that can count, but we don't want a cashier that is grumpy and cantankerous and says terrible things to customers. You don't want that. And if you're a cashier, you know it's tough. Cashiers out there, tough job. It's a tough thing. I've done it. It's tough. Some customers are ridiculous. I've seen situations where the cashier was by the customer accused the cashier of putting the gas pump on the wrong side so they had to stretch the, yeah, that's ridiculous. Nutty stuff. I know someone one time that said that since the credit card asked for a zip code, they thought that the company was trying to infiltrate them and steal their identity. Yeah, that's because the credit card machine wanted a zip code. So people can be weird and strange, and also people have bad days. And if you're a cashier, you know that people have bad days. Not just you, but everybody can have a bad day. Stress is also something we have to get honest about, that it may be that we've overcommitted ourselves. We're trying to do too much, or we're trying to think we can control everything, or we're trying not to live one moment at a time. There's something called situational awareness, about being present in the moment. People make a lot of mistakes because they're thinking about what they're doing next. What's the next thing you're going to do, right? And you can't think about the next thing you're going to do sometimes. You have to focus on what you're focused on. Make a list, be organized, but you have to work on what you're working on. And if you're a leader, you really have to take a look at the results you're trying to get, but on a daily basis, what are you doing and what are your interactions to actually get those results? Extremely important. But it asks the question, that leads us to this question, and that is, does that mean that engaged employees, does that really create total loyalty? I mean, is loyalty created by employee or customer satisfaction? Is that where loyalty comes from? And the truth is, well, let me put it this way. A dog isn't loyal because you love it and pet it and feed it. A dog is loyal because you scratch him in places he cannot reach. That's right. Bring me anybody's dog, and I'll scratch him wherever he can't get his paws, on the top of his head, the ridge of his back, and he'll follow me anywhere. What are you doing for people that they could not do for themselves? What are you doing for people they could not do for themselves? And that is clarity. Are you clear? It doesn't matter how smart you are if no one knows what you're talking about. Yeah. My Aunt Ethel, who's very smart, she's 80 years old, lives in Savannah, Georgia, very smart. And my dad is 90 years old and lives in Florida. And my dad and I had not seen Aunt Ethel in years. So we saw Aunt Ethel, and we hadn't seen her a long time. And Aunt Ethel looked at me, looked at my dad, looked back at me. And Aunt Ethel's a genius, but she's not very clear. Looked at me, looked at my dad, looked back at me, and she said this: "You know something, Garrison? You look more like your daddy than your daddy looks like himself." She said, "What I mean is your daddy, who doesn't look like anybody now, did then, you know." No, we don't know. It doesn't matter how smart you are if no one knows what you're talking about. Clarity creates trust. A lot of you may be managing remote employees out there. And remote employees need to know what a good job looks like when it's finished. What does a good job look like when it's done? They need to know that you actually trust them. If they're working remotely and they're working at home, that you know they're not just watching Netflix, watching some weird Ben Affleck movie, that you believe, that they need to believe that you believe they're actually working. And the third thing is when are you going to talk to them? As a boss, sometimes it's not quality time. They want to know when they're going to talk to you. It's kind of like with your kids. Your kids don't want quality time. They want to know, when's daddy coming home? That's what I want to know, right? When's mama coming home? So they want to know, employees want to know when you are going to, when is the meeting going to be? Am I going to meet with my boss on Friday at noon? When is that going to happen? So it's important. But as we wind down the program today, we have to ask ourselves a big question, and that is, what do we want to do when it comes to change in leadership? I think the first thing is to get real. So I want everybody out there to go ahead and just cross your arms like this. And as you've got your arms crossed, I want you to go ahead and now cross them the uncomfortable, unnatural way that you would never cross them. So we're going to go like this, and then we're going to reverse it like that. What does that feel like? Weird, strange, wrong? This is what change feels like. We've stood just like this for the next 2 hours, learn two very valuable lessons. One, we got to go to the bathroom badly, but secondly, it would feel just about the same. That's right. If we crossed our arms the uncomfortable way, it would feel the same as it's always felt in a couple hours. Why is that? Because change is not the issue. It's our resistance to change that's the issue. My dad's 90 years old. On the computer every day, he's 90. Years ago, he wasn't. Years ago, my dad sent me his very first email. He just said, "Damn it," just 2 words. But last Christmas, my dad bought all my family's presents online. Of course, he bought me a nightgown because he's 90 years old from Amazon.com. My dad knows that action and adaptability create opportunity. That action and adaptability create opportunity. Are you flexible enough along the way to the goal? So as we wind up the program here today, and thanks again for having me. I really appreciate that, and it's an honor to be here. Keep this in mind, and whether it's Indian country or the world, that if you believe in your own value, it's a lot easier to show it to others. Believe in yourself. Know that you can get through this. This is the 20th pandemic in about 500 years, and what they all have in common is they all end, and we come out better on the other side. That's historically true. So we do the best we can to get through it. And also remember that the heroes and cowards feel the same fear. It's the action they take that separates them. You can't always think yourself into action. You got to act yourself into thinking. You got to take the action. And that big action is making sure that the people around you feel valuable, cared for, they feel listened to. You're doing things in a very clear manner that's understood. And you're making sure they know how important they are and how that you can't do your job without them. When it comes to stress, things are always going to be difficult every now and then. But how good are you when things are tough? How good are you when things are bad? And you'll be surprised you're better than you think you are. Sometimes we overreact because of a belief that we have that somehow we're not going to get through it. Historically, we do. The most research shows that 90% of everything everyone is worried about is never going to happen. What's the value of worry? The answer, 0. So believe in yourself, believe in your people, believe in your tribe, believe that you can move forward. Believe that we can all move forward in this. I'm Garrison Wynn. Thank you so much.
Hi, Garrison.
Hi.
Again, I'm Katie Bohocki, the Executive Director of TCSA, and I want to say thank you to you, Garrison. I appreciate your presentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
I believe you're holding TCSA's thank you gift as well.
Yeah, this is great. So not only is it symbolic, and I appreciate that a lot, it's actually a fantastic blanket that's being stolen by my girlfriend in about 5 minutes, but I love it.
I bet.
She wants it.
I bet. They're really soft for sure.
Super soft. I mean, just amazingly soft.
They are great.
I love it.
They're awesome. All right. Do you want to start with talking about your survey question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, we're going to see something we've never seen before. We're going to probably have one of the hardest times finding employees. Keeping them, we'll see that. But right now, the research is just in is about half of the people between ages, we'll say 18 and 34, I think the new one I saw, who are unemployed, aren't looking for a job. Never happened before. So we got a lot of people out there who don't have a job, who are not looking for a job. So some of that is probably influenced by the pandemic, I guess. I'm at home, I'm not going anywhere, I don't know. But that's really a strange thing to see. So we might have a really difficult time finding people, that is for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Let's get to the first question for you. What is the one thing I can do to get people to take action?
Well, the one thing you can do to get people to take action is to make sure that they see their input. I'm sorry, let me reverse that. They need to specifically see their input in your solution. That means if you're going to tell somebody to do something and here's the process, they really need to see that you've listened to them. That you have considered their opinion. Maybe you didn't put their idea in the program or the plan, but that there's some proof of being heard. And the best way is when they can see some level of their input in your action. So that's the way to get people to take action. The other thing is to explain exactly, very specifically, how it's going to benefit them, and then maybe short-term and long-term projections on what it's going to be. A lot of people aren't interested. If you're 24 years old, what's going to happen? The future is Friday if you're 24 sometimes. No offense, but that's kind of true on surveys. So they need to know what an immediate success is going to be. How's it going to help you? So that's what we see most of.
Perfect. Sounds great. Wonderful. Are people better at changing now than they used to be?
That is such a good question. That's a question we get a lot. The first answer is I think that if you're below age 35, you're probably one of the most flexible generations ever. Your ability to get up to speed quickly and learn quickly, and just your base knowledge of the world is better than previous generations. So they can appear to be more flexible because of that. But also the truth is, if you haven't done something for very long, you can change better. So someone who's 60 years old, just by their very nature, I've been doing this, I don't want to change. So that kind of, I think, pollutes that kind of information. But I would say, looking at some stuff that is from Pew, I believe that was, I think it's Pew recently, showed that people in the last 5 years don't change as well as they probably did the previous 5 years, but a lot better than they did 20 years ago, if that makes any sense. So it's better, not as better as it could be. How about that?
Makes sense, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think that the surge that many C stores have will somehow be sustainable past COVID?
Well, a lot of these stores became the convenience stores that just became grocery stores, and those relationships were built. They went to the C store when they couldn't go to another store, and they'll come back. So I think some of that is sustainable. How to measure that, I don't know. I don't know that research is happening, but I will tell you what, I mean, just anecdotally, if they came to your store and they didn't come to your store normally, they've got a connection, had a good experience, they'll be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Do you think keeping and retaining employees will be easier in the future?
Well, again, I think that it's going to be tougher. Right now, employees have a lot of choices, and one of the choices is not to work. I try to be direct and not sugarcoat things. But if you're a parent between the ages of, let's say, 50 and 65, you let your kids stay at home longer. And that's in all cultures. That was an acceptable thing. So a lot of people just aren't really looking for a job who are in certain age groups, in a younger age group. I think it's going to be harder for people to stay in the job if the option they can just quit and they're fine. It doesn't affect them financially just to stop working. So you'll see people who want shorter hours, they want more flexibility, and they'll be in and out of jobs. I think that could possibly or will definitely affect that for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. So one last question for you. You said stress was not real. Wondering if people disagree, and if so, how could it not be real if people are feeling it?
Well, you do feel it because it's a belief you hold. I mean, if I believe something strongly enough, my reaction to it is based on my belief. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, if I believe I really, really don't like eating pancakes, I'm going to eat those pancakes very carefully. I'm going to judge them very heavily because I believe I don't like them. And if they're the best pancakes in the world, they're not that good. I didn't like them when I started. So maybe they're good for bad pancakes. That makes sense. So that's the belief that we hold. So again, in my example, people just jump out of airplanes for fun. I wouldn't jump out of a perfectly good airplane. If the airplane's on fire, I'm the first person out. But I'm not going to jump out of an airplane for fun. But people do because the sensation they get, that adrenaline, that stress they get, they enjoy. And there are people who are hospitalized because they can't adapt to the new software at work. So that is a belief that we hold. So I'm not saying that it's not real because you don't feel it. I'm saying that stress doesn't happen because you encounter a situation and your body somehow biologically reacts to it immediately. Your brain has to look at it. Your brain has to feel something first, and that's about a belief. So,
awesome. Well said. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. Great comments in the chat. Everyone's saying thank you and another great presentation. So it was really informative.
Thanks for having me so much. And thanks for the blanket and just thanks for doing what you do. I really appreciate it. You guys are great.
Oh, absolutely. Our pleasure. Thank you. And we'll take a quick lunch break. So everybody go grab something to eat and we'll see you back at 11:45. Thanks, everyone.